Peeker's advantage is the bane of every FPS player's existence.
Oh my golly gosh.
What was that from your kinder?
Having my op.
Yeah, I knew it.
Under?
Okay, wait. Oh my god. So what's
What the
This guy's cheating.
Regardless of the game, Peeker's advantage is widely considered to be one of the most significant issues tactical FPS developers face.
Oh my gosh. It looks like a full model almost.
And even if its existence is inevitable, you can't deny that being on the receiving end of it is very frustrating. When every millisecond an input makes a difference in these games, knowing that your enemy can simply see you before you see them just feels unfair.
Playing on high ping is obviously really annoying. I mean, it's the same with like CSGO, but you have incredible Peeker's advantage, but at the same time, holding angles is very, very difficult on high ping.
And for essentially a decade, this felt like an unfixable aspect of shooters that we all just had to accept. That was until one company decided to do something about it. When Riot Games first announced Valorant, they made a promise to all but eliminate Peeker's advantage. We all thought it was impossible, and it turns out 2 years after the game's release, we were right.
What happened? What just happened?
Oh.
Wait,
Done. He was just standing there.
Coming.
One more hit for 78, but he killed himself.
What?
But to Riot's credit, they did earnestly try to make improvements. And the truth is that even though Peeker's advantage sucks, it might also be kind of a good thing. Hey folks, before we get into my second favorite pastime, which is shitting on Riot, I would like to remind you all that we have merch. Head over to shop.thescore.com to buy t-shirts and hoodies, and I can personally guarantee that for every piece of our merch that you wear at the same time, you will shave 10 milliseconds off of your network latency. Can I guarantee that? Like, legally? Alright, so before we get into all of this, I should probably explain what Peeker's advantage actually is, since it can get kind of complicated. So let me explain it in gamer-friendly terms. Let's say you're holding an angle in an online match. You're standing still, waiting for an enemy to walk straight into your crosshair as any good defender would. But before your brain can even react, your opponent flies around the corner and running one-taps you. After that, you're probably thinking one of three things. They're hacking, the dude has godlike pre-fire angles, or he had RNGesus on his side. But more often than not, what actually occurred is Peeker's advantage. Basically, in nearly every single online shooter you play, an opponent who peeks will be able to see you for a few frames before you see them. Now, the question is, why does Peeker's advantage exist in the first place? Well, that's the million-dollar question. I said that's the million-dollar question. Colten, buddy, that's your cue. Come on.
And now, the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
Whoa, hold on, Dimitri. I don't get paid millions of dollars to answer these questions either. I do this out of pure philanthropy and the kindness of my science-loving heart. Anyway, Peeker's advantage is caused by a multitude of factors, like ping, your ISP's infrastructure, tick rate, and the actual server itself. Any combination of these can dictate the severity of said Peeker's advantage.
City, go next.
Yeah, so that is if you do this at long, man, come on.
We actually already did a pretty comprehensive breakdown on all of these things in our Cracked On ping, so make sure to check that out. For the sake of this video, I'll try not to complicate things too much because there's really only one major thing you need to know. Information does not travel instantaneously. When you play a game online, your inputs go through quite the process, which takes a certain amount of time before the information reaches the server and ultimately the rest of the players in the game. That time in between is where the Peeker's advantage generally lives. So to break it all down, let's take a look at Dimitri's peeking example and use Valorant since Riot has been kind enough to tell us how some of their netcode actually works. Since it may take different amounts of time for information to travel to and from the server for two different players, Riot's servers introduce a small buffer that ensures that within the margin of that buffer, both players' inputs are applied to the game state at the correct time. But if you have an unreasonably high ping, well, there's only so much Riot can do about you getting that information significantly later than an opponent with an excellent ping. And if your opponent has ping noticeably longer than the buffer time, all the less time you'll have to react to them rounding a corner. While the fine folks at Valve and other major devs haven't given us quite as much insight into their netcode, there are undoubtedly some similar measures in place to help mitigate ping variance. And in the same way, these measures can help minimize peeker's advantage. To a point.
And that was the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
Now, the fact of the matter is that peeker's advantage has just always sort of existed. And for us CS diehards, it's something that we've kind of just come to terms with. That being said, having poor network infrastructure and only 64-tick servers for competitive play doesn't make the pill any easier to swallow. But that's what brings us to Valorant, the revolutionary FPS title that was going to fix all of that and offer so much more. You see, leading up to its launch, Riot promised that Valorant would deliver three things: precise gunplay.
What the f is that?
Abilities that provide a tactical advantage. And a system that went to war on peeker's advantage.
Yeah, I got him. 3, 2.
I didn't see him. I died before he peeked.
Spike planted.
So yeah, these things didn't happen. And Valorant was, and still is, memed into oblivion for it. But omitting spray patterns and adding chamber, these were likely philosophical decisions made by Riot and not mistakes. But what about the war on peeker's advantage? Limiting it as much as possible is a net positive for any game. So what happened exactly? Well, Valorant launched with 128-tick servers and what appears to be a better network, meaning you get information faster than you would in CS matchmaking. But even then, it still somehow, sometimes, feels worse. And I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way. Back in March of 2021, 100 Thieves were fined for delaying their online match against Immortals. 100 Thieves delayed their match because they felt that the server they were about to play on would give Immortals an unfair ping advantage.
Right, and they have a guy at 8 ping.
Yeah, what about the 8 ping versus 40? It's like 30, 40?
No, they're not. It's the same. One has a crazy peeker's advantage, and the other one has it working against him. What do you mean? That doesn't, like, having 8 ping, there is a huge difference with 8 ping compared to 44, by the way.
Now, it's not like CSGO has never had an issue like this before. I mean, due to COVID or visa issues, we have seen some insane ping in a handful of professional matches. Ultimately, it's possible that the reason that Valorant's peeker's advantage feels so much worse is just because of the way the game is designed. For starters, getting headshots in Valorant is a lot easier than in CSGO. Sometimes peeking around a corner and one-tapping someone with the Vandal is child's play.
It's not your jam. When I'm watching highlights nowadays on Twitter, it's just like the people are actually like proud of the highlights they're doing. But when I see the way like they shoot and the way they get the highlights, I'm like, it looks easy. It's not so hard to do this, you know?
Then there's movement. In CSGO, it's fast and floaty, letting you counter-strafe and jiggle to help combat peeker's advantage. But Valorant's movement feels, let's say, inconsistent. On one hand, beginning to move feels like you're starting up a lawnmower, but as Shroud pointed out, stopping is quite the opposite.
You stop on a dime in this game, so like when you start shooting when you see the person, and your character just stops because they stop so fast, and it looks like you're running and headshotting, but you're actually not running and headshotting. It's just that you stop so quick in this game.
So on top of counter-strafing not being as effective, and the fact that it's more difficult to lead your opponent, peeker's advantage can feel a lot harder to combat. Mix that with how easy it is to headshot and, well, you get the Valorant experience.
Up short.
But if it's not Riot's fault, then how do you get rid of it? Well, unless you're playing on LAN, where there's virtually no latency, it's impossible. So unfortunately, a lot of the onus lands on us. You see, just as much as your enemy's ping can affect their peaker's advantage, your own latency can affect your quote-unquote holder's disadvantage. Some would even say that's the only thing that matters. If you're running on a Wi-Fi card and a 60 Hz monitor while downloading all 6 seasons of The Sopranos, you're just gonna have to accept that that's the hand you've been dealt. Back in 2020, Nvidia even released a case study with nothing discussing how low latency systems can actually help eliminate peaker's advantage.
Often gamers attribute peaker's advantage only to game net code or network latency. However, let's look at the role of system latency in peaker's advantage. In this first test, we're going to be looking at our low latency system peeking into our medium latency system.
And so when we actually peek through like a wide swing, you'll get to see the major difference.
Wow. Yeah. The wide swing, you like almost see his whole body when he sees like your shoulder.
Next up, we have our medium latency system peeking into our low latency system.
You look at that. Yep. Crosshairs are both.
You'd almost neutralize peaker's advantage. Like that's at least even, if not favoring the lower latency system.
Now, this is obviously easier said than done. Not everyone is going to have the money or ability to build a low latency setup. On top of that, you can't control the system someone else has. And figuring out exactly what caused the problem for you specifically and solving it can be impossible. But maybe it's only a problem if you choose to see it that way. Elige, despite being a CSGO pro, says that peaker's advantage in Valorant is a good thing.
You know how hard it would be to like play a game that has 0 peaker's advantage? People are asking for something that they don't even like understand like what they're asking for. You would have to like use utility to get anyone off of any angle. It's just not even possible to play like that.
And I think there's some validity to this claim. Peaker's advantage might be the lesser of two evils in the grand scheme of things. In theory, holding an angle should be easier than pushing into one. That being said, reducing it as much as possible will objectively make the game more fair. And to this day, Riot are still trying to make improvements that fight against the issue. Other than putting a server in every frickin' city in the world, what should Riot do? Well, it's probably cheaper for them to build a time machine, go back, and never make these promises in the first place.
Marty! You've got to come back with me!
Now, I know, this isn't the clean and tidy conclusion we all wanted to come to, but there just isn't one. See, there's actually no definitive way for us to even test what game has the worst peaker's advantage because I don't have the tech, Valorant has no demo files, and there can always be desync issues. Even if we pulled it off, that would just be our experience. And peaker's advantage affects everyone in different ways. But that doesn't mean you can't do anything about it. Streamer Royal G posted a great Twitter thread about experimenting with how you peak and hold angles. Valorant and CS are games with nearly limitless possibilities, and thinking outside the box, holding unique angles, or inventing the Honda CR-V peak can give you an edge. And maybe, just maybe, it might be kind of fun.
$1 million? What do you mean I don't get $1 million? What do you mean it's just a turn of phrase? I don't know if that'll pan out to be funny or not. I envision you cutting me off in the middle of turn